So thank you for being here this July morning. Hope all is well. Want to start the meeting with David Newburger, who is going to discuss the city's ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. Hopefully I have all of that right. So with that, David, please take it away.
Fine. I'd like to share my screen. And I think the STLTV needs to give me the power to do that. Is that right?
Yeah, I think they do.
I just clicked shared, but that's not what I want. Well, let's just, I don't know what's happening. I'm at a complete loss. So why don't we just go ahead and proceed? And that's not that critical because what I was going to do is just share with you my, what the Office on the Disabled has on their website, which includes rather substantial materials about the ADA transition plan, the work that we're doing now. And I would welcome you to see it. And I will tell you, since I can't show you, that the address is the standard St. Louis domain, which is stllouis-mo.gov. And then if you just put in a / and write disabilities, you'll get to our webpage. And I would welcome you to do that. And I welcome you to provide their opportunities for input there. And we welcome people responding. I'll get into that in a minute. But let me explain that what happened was the ADA was written passed in 1990. The state and local governments were all covered by it, among others. And state and local governments with more than 50 people were required to do what was called a transition plan, a self-evaluation followed by a transition plan. The word self-evaluation devolves down to where are there inaccessible features in your city, and the transition plan devolves down to making a plan for eliminating those barriers. Now, in some senses, well, let me just give you dates. That requirement was in 1991. And all the barriers were supposed to be eliminated in 1982. 1992. We didn't quite make that. Actually, no city in the country did that, and many cities have not completed their transition plans. The attitude of the Justice Department has generally been to do what it does in, for example, looking at police departments. If it appears that the agencies don't have compliance in mind and they aren't working on doing their best to make themselves accessible, and they can show that they're working on these issues, then the Department of Justice really doesn't come after them. If they're just ignoring it, then you get one of these consent decrees or a settlement agreement, which requires the city to spend a great deal more money than it planned on and eliminate barriers in great order. So since I joined the city government several years ago, I have always wanted to see us move forward with our transition plan work. And I want to see it because I want to eliminate the barriers. But I think as a general government matter, the city wants to see it so that we can be in charge of it ourselves rather than having to turn it over to the feds to tell us what to do. And that has been one reason why we've been able to move forward. Now, next, I want to back up a little bit and explain a concept that the ADA has for state and local governments. We're called Title II. And that is that we're not required to eliminate every barrier to access. we are required to eliminate every barrier to our programs written large. So that, for example, we have a program of providing swimming classes in our parks. Well, we have to make that program available to everybody, including kids who are deaf or have other disabilities. And the attitude of the law on that subject is everybody can do it to the extent of their ability. You can set up, for example, a dance class for deaf kids who want to do it, but still, if the deaf family wants the kid to be in the general population, they have to be allowed in the general population. And so that's program accessibility. And then take it one step further. We provide restrooms in City Hall. And so that means that we have a program of providing restrooms to the public. That means that we have to make that program accessible. But it doesn't mean we have to make every restroom accessible. It's just so that there is reasonable access to restrooms for people who come into City Hall. So the fact that some of them are done and others are not is something that we would not have a problem with. Recently, in City Hall, we redid a lot of restrooms and did a lot of women's restrooms and did not make them all accessible, but did make some accessible. And then apparently we ran out of money, and so we didn't touch the men's restrooms. So that becomes a problem. The other aspect of all of that I think is very salient is that our city which was built on assumption that we would have 1 million residents and taxpayers, and we have 300,000 of them. And so under those circumstances, we have, for all of the capital needs that we have in the city, very limited or arguably no capital budget at all. A great deal of the money that we spend that's in the nature of capital investment is either on grants, for example, under the highway laws, and periodically we issue bond issues that pay for fire trucks and police cars and a variety of other things that are essential capital needs. Well, a couple of years ago, one of those bond issues also included a provision for $1.5 million to be spent on developing a transition plan. And so we are going through that process. The process, well, even before I get to that, we have worked for a long time on our program accessibility. We have to have a grievance procedure. We do reasonable accommodations for employees. When people need bills to be in Braille or large type or whatever, we work that out. We do a lot of things to make sure that our programs are fully accessible. This meeting is being run with live captioning so that people who have difficulty hearing will be able to understand what we're doing and so forth. There's a lot of underlying work that has been done. But the physical plant it has massive lack of improvement, and the physical plant is really streets, sidewalks, and buildings, and so a lot of the effort of the money that we now have is being spent for two purposes. One. And both of them are investigative, or really on the self-evaluation side of things. We are going through streets and sidewalks. There are something like 2,000 miles of sidewalks. We're not going to fix them all in any time soon. But what we are doing is people are evaluating sidewalks in all parts of the city, doing reports on what the status of those sidewalks is, and attempting to develop a plan for prioritizing what we do first. And those issues are both based on the nature of the use of the space. For example, sidewalks near public buildings, sidewalks near schools, sidewalks near bus stops. We're attempting to create prioritization that will allow us then to proceed on these things. And like all things in our capital opportunities, which creates a difficulty from the equity point of view, is that anytime anybody gets a grant, for example, to improve a street, say going down Tucker Boulevard, we make sure that it complies with the standards for sidewalk construction. But that doesn't necessarily get into areas where there's a big need, and we certainly deal with a lot of sidewalks. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen the sidewalks that have sunk into the ground and have weeds growing out of them and so forth. And in some of those cases, there's only one residence on a whole block. So that there's a very difficult things for us to get to from a cost benefit analysis, and they're difficult to set priorities. So what we're attempting to do is create a prioritization plan so that we know what we're going to do. And then my hope, and now this is maybe me just talking, but my hope as we do further capital bond issues, that a portion of those bond issues will be set aside to provide money for doing this retrofit work. And so we would do the retro, and that would be free for us to pick what to do, so that we could talk about where the sidewalks are bad in a neighborhood, regardless of whether the federal money is paying for street work in that neighborhood. But in addition to that, whatever other grants we can get, we of course will make those accessible too. So what we've done is that we've hired a company that have turned out to be quite helpful, called Oates Engineering. And they have been leading this first phase, which has been more in the self-evaluation phase. And they have done a lot of physical review and looked at streets all over town, collected the data, looked at, I forget the number of buildings, but a rather large number of buildings. I think we have around 164 buildings in the city, and we know some of them are a problem. We're concerned about the recreation facilities, the parks and so forth, which people really do consume. And so we're behind the 8 ball just because I believe in this stuff. We have been pushing hard to bring ourselves in compliance. And happily, some of the city fathers so far have given us some support of that within the bounds of what money we really can spend on this relative to other needs of the city. So just one more thing, and that is that the Oates people on our webpage have developed a souvenir, and we are asking, we have had public meetings in this Zoom day. It's difficult, but we've had meetings with the consumer-based organizations who provide services or focus on services for people with disabilities. We've communicated with a much broader group of community-based organizations. We invite anybody we can find to participate and give us feedback. And there is a survey that is a rolling survey that we continue. We're not taking it down. We're continuing to add whenever people will add to it. And that's designed to try to help us make clear what priorities we're establishing. And that survey is also on the web page that I mentioned before. And I would welcome all of you to fill out the survey. And I certainly would welcome your constituencies to take a look at it and, of course, give us whatever further information they have. And then perhaps one other thing I should have said, and that is this money is really being managed by the Board of Public Service, not me. I just make a lot of noise. But But we have a team of people from the Board of Public Service, my office, and Oates, who are handling this. And the Board of Public Service people have also been terrific. They have, you know, the old line, give a carpenter a hammer and he thinks everything is a nail. We'll give engineers a chance to talk about something and everything is a construction project. So I have to make sure they're thinking about the soft stuff too. But I think we are accomplishing that satisfactorily. So I'm open for whatever discussion you want to have, Charles.
David, thank you.
Can I ask
Are there any
something,
questions?
David, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I have a same-sex partner with dementia, so we can go into female bathrooms. I have a friend whose husband has dementia, and she has trouble finding family-oriented restrooms. I know that in small spaces that's going to be probably impossible, but have they put a family restroom sign on in City Hall somewhere so that someone can take someone of a different gender into a bathroom without concern, or do you know?
Well, signage is an important part of this, and part of the problem is that when are signs enough? I mean, there are two.
I know.
There are two single use or family use restrooms in the basement of City Hall that are signed that way.
Okay, sorry, I didn't.
But I don't know that I have a sign adequate upstairs. I'm in the basement that gets that information across, and we need to do that. Back in the days of the Stockley demonstrations, some of the demonstrators said there's no information about how disabled people can work, and we have signs outside City Hall on all four corners about how to reach the disability issue.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry. It's just something that came to mind, and you can't do everything, and signage is always crazy. So
but we try hard, and we immediately interact with anybody with a need. But I would also say that the idea of having family restrooms is clearly within the standards that the ADA stands for, so that that is going to be in any construction that we do. There's going to be something that's going to be in that picture, and that's even before the issue of transgender people and so forth. But a family restroom works for them too.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you're right. Normally they prefer the gender of their, but anyway, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions?
This is Christine. I have a quick question. Hi, David. Thanks
for
Christine. Presenting. Could you talk about, I think the importance of having folks fill out the survey, and I know that the Community Mobility Committee is doing some sidewalk audits as well, just because, as you mentioned, I think there's about 2,000 miles of sidewalks, in particular in the city of St. Louis. And so having folks participate in the survey is critically important to make sure that we can get as much information on what needs to be fixed as possible.
And all of that information will go into the work that we're doing, and as we go through this developing of a transition plan and setting priorities for construction. And so, yes, I'm all in favor of that. The more citizen participation we can do, the better. This meeting itself proves that our reaching out to the public is not entirely satisfactory, because some of you are getting this for the first time, and I wish that we figured out how to communicate with all of our publics more broadly, but it's the challenge that we always have.
Keep me posted if I can be helpful, and thanks again for your time this morning.
Thank you, Christine. Good to hear from you.
Any other questions? David, I have several. What percentage of the population has in the city has a mobility disability?
Well, the national number is somewhere between 15 and 20%. The city of St. Louis, because we're an aging community, is at the high end of that. They obviously we're looking forward to new community survey results from census, and the stuff that's available right now is pretty out of date. But as the new round of rollout of not only the census reports itself, but also the community survey stuff, we'll be able to speak with much more specificity. The one thing that we do know is that somewhere around 70 to 80% of people of working age who have disabilities do not have jobs. And so that means that a vast number of our disabled colleagues are very poor. And that number I'm quoting is not all people with disabilities. It's working age people with disabilities. When you add the rest of the population, the number goes up. But the fact is that very many of them, people with disabilities, are of working age. When you look at the census data that is available and you overlay on that where poverty is, and where you overlay on that where there are African American and Latino neighborhoods, there's a high density of the folks with disabilities in both of those layers. And so, yeah, I mean, actually, I don't know that it's true, but sometimes I wonder whether playing what Max Starkland and I used to call the disability card helps with bringing success to other parts of the community at the same time. And we certainly would love to have that impact.
The other question I have, just to put people in this in perspective, cities have been sued because they have not done any work around ADA compliance. Is that correct?
That's right. And
So,
and I mean, I've maintained good relationships with the Department of Justice. We also have an architect in town who is a dear friend and constantly consults with me, and she has served for many years as an expert witness in Department of Justice Fair Housing Act cases. So, I mean, we have open channels of communication, not only there, but around the country. And we do our best to stay ahead of the curve on this. One time I asked, we also have a group of organizations from offices like our own in cities around the country. And I asked the gentleman from New York City whether they have a transition plan in place. And his answer was New York City really doesn't have one, except in their parks department. And that's because I was the head of the parks department for a while. So, I mean, a lot of people are in bad shape, but you can't just shut your eyes. Years ago, Kansas City was attacked, if I can use the word, by the Justice Department, and they had to spend a fortune and didn't really know how to proceed in an organized way because they had not been paying attention. So for many years, our office was started in '74. And we have a history of being pretty good about disability in our city. And I certainly am making sure we stay up on track with that.
all right. Are there any other questions, thoughts?
David, I'm assuming the St. Louis Public Schools is in charge of their own work. I know as they downsize to fewer schools, some of the schools have elevators that work that have been retrofitted into those schools, and some of them don't. And as they reduce the number of those schools, I kind of worry about some of the kiddos. And I've got to tell you, a lot of the buildings I've been in, the elevators aren't working. You know,
Yeah.
so it's just, but I'm assuming they have to worry about that themselves.
Yeah, so, some years ago, they got a grant to upgrade restrooms.
Yeah.
And at that time, we used the building code to get them to have building permits to do the work they were doing.
Yeah.
And one of the building permit requirements is not only that the restroom be accessible, but that the route to the restroom be accessible.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's where then a lot of those, or at least some of those elevators and lifts came, moving classrooms around.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what, when I was talking about program accessibility, a school may have a class on a third floor that a disabled kid wants to attend.
Yeah.
And you can either put in an elevator or you can move the classroom to the first floor.
Yeah, they've moved a lot of art and music classes downstairs and in some of these older buildings. I was just kind of wondering what.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we very much support the school system and want to see it thrive, but we don't have any decision-making authority.
Yeah, and I would imagine so.
All right, anyone else? All right, to David's point, and to Christine's point, on July 17th, I'll be participating and invite you all. The Community Mobility Committee will be doing some of those audits, and they'll be in Hyde Park from 10 to 12 on Salisbury Street, and I'll send that information out. But it's just from 10 to 12. But again, there are thousands of miles of sidewalks that need to be accounted for. And so all help is needed to do that. So 10 to 12, Hyde Park on Salisbury Street, and I'll get you the address on July 17th. And I think they have another one, I want to say August 28th. So they're really trying to get people involved, to get them out on the streets and determine, especially in areas where there is a lot of traffic, pedestrian traffic, what those sidewalks and streets look like. So I'll get that out to you by the end of the day today. There's a survey, or there's a sign up form. If you go ahead and sign up, that'd be greatly appreciated, because as you know, many hands make light work. So want to do that. And I actually serve on the CMC community. Lisa? Yes.
Can you get the survey by via internet?
I got it as an email, so that's how I'll send it out.
Okay, so I'm just saying, because we can send it out to other business owners like me. I could have filled out the survey, but I know other people who are landlords or property owners that, can they go out that way for them to?
Yeah. Anything else? David, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, David.
I will probably ask you to come back at least a little bit, maybe not our September meeting, because that'll be too soon, but maybe November, because the census information will be out, and then we can have that conversation again about what we need to do for our population. So I appreciate that.
I have an old map that shows the incidence of disability in the city that compares to other categories, and I'll dig that out and put that out to you, Charles, to circulate to the commission, if you would.
Thank you.
It's out of date, but it's still how out of date it's, you know.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate that. So my report will be kind of brief, but here we go. And I'm going to ask both Joe and Christine to weigh in as they desire or need to, or clarify. The city budget was sort of passed, if I can use that term, oddly. Our budget was set as of July 1 as $380,000 and some change. The budget did not necessarily go through the normal process. Board of E&A passed it. It went to the Board of Aldermen. The Board of Aldermen did not pass it. And so it actually just became law based on the old ENA numbers from, I believe, May or March, whichever. As discussed previously, we're still short at least one investigator. I will make that point. The city council's office received $500,000 to help us with investigations. I think we've already been in contact with them. There's several different ways that we think that we can expand our service delivery. One is environmental justice, and we're already working and talking with groups about what environmental justice may look like. I don't know if the Board of Aldermen will make any changes into the budget. They certainly can, because they still have it as Board Bill 1. It would still have to be approved by ENA if there are going to be any changes related to the budget. So we'll see what happens. The other thing that's going on now, which does not affect us, is the federal funding that is coming in. And so you may have seen and will see continual articles about that. That does not affect us. We just do general revenue. That's where we are. And our EEOC funding, which is minimal at best. Certain things that we're working on, Title VI programming, that is when we talk about federal funding, federal funds demand that we have a Title VI program or policy in place. We've had one. It was housed at the Board of Public Service, which they sort of concluded, and we agreed that it was not the natural place for them to be, that it actually should be housed in CREA. So we are going to be submitting this Friday, or by this Friday, to the City Councilor's office, the Title VI policy, and it governs activity related to if you receive federal funding. If you're either a recipient or a subrecipient, what you need to do around Title VI. And Title VI basically is the provision in federal law that says you must have a plan around immigrant and refugees and limited English proficiency. So, and there's other things that are captured in there, but that's the essence of it. So we'll get that to the City Council's office for their review, and then it'll go to the mayor's office. We're also going to do and submit the actual limited English proficiency plan, which is more nuts and bolts about how city departments need to do this. That'll be getting out to them in the next week or two. We've got a committee working on that to make sure that we kind of dot the I's and cross the T's, but we'll get that to them as well. It'll go to City Councilor, then it'll go to Mayor's office for her possible approval. Our educational activity, our outreach activity, I'll be real clear, we've never, for the last couple of years, we haven't really believed that tabling is the best way to go. So what we've done is we've started sending letters out. We sent letters out to, and I know Angela's on and she probably has the exact number, but over 400 barbershops, beauty shops, beauty supply stores, etc., around two things: the Crown Act, one, and the ban the box. We want to get that information in people's hands, and so we did that. We also sent out about 5 or 6 letters to lawyers of landlords and property managers, talking about our ordinances. Because of that, Matthew Chase, who some of you all may or may not know, he's been through our office before, allowed me to be on his Zoom meeting where we talked directly with landlords about the issues related to city ordinances and about what's going to happen when the moratorium is finally lifted and you've got people who are not allowed to even apply for apartments because in the application process or in the advertisement process, it'll say no evictions over the last 5 years, let's say. And because of that, you've got all of these folks who will not be able to even apply for housing. And I suggested, and I'll continue to say this, landlords, property managers need to get rid of that for the foreseeable future, because here's going to be the problem for CREA. If you accept somebody's application, but not somebody else, and you do not have in your policy manual why you did that, that could be a form of discrimination. So, and that means that we're going to have a lot of folks who believe or will come to us and say, I've been discriminated against, whether it's race, whether it's source of income, whether it's immigration or immigrant status, all those kinds of issues. It'll be a problem if you do not eliminate that policy that says no evictions over the last 5 years. I think that's all that I have in my portfolio. There are some events that we will table at. I want to be clear. One of them will be Tower Grove Pride Fest. So if anybody wants to help us at the table for that day, we're going to do Tower Grove Pride Fest. We're also going to spend time more on Instagram and YouTube. I cut one 2 weeks ago. I'll cut one this afternoon, where we highlight specific ordinances in our city or policy issues that have come up, and we'll talk about that. We also are working with the transgender community. One of the things that we have discovered, there is no paper or no sort of information that tells the LGBTQIA community about the accessibility relative to shelters and transitional housing. There is not in one place any document that says this is the shelter, this is what their policy is, and how you as a person trying to enter that shelter, what you need to know. Whether that's that you can't, you have to leave during the day, you can't have, there's no policy regarding to showering, which has been a big deal. Bathroom facilities is a big deal. If you work overnight, can you come in during the day and rest? There's nothing that says any of that. So we're starting probably on Thursday or early next week. We're going to call the shelters and they, and I see Christine's still on. We asked the continuum of care, would that be okay? And they said yes. So we're going to call all the shelters and transitional housing programs, get that information, and then provide it to the community, as well as to Squish, which is the St. Louis Queer Plus Helpline. I'm missing a word, but I'm close. So that they know, so that they can inform people who call them, as well as 211, what the shelter conditions are. So we're going to do that. So that'll take about a week, 2 weeks, and then we're going to get it out to as many people as we possibly can. Because Denise won't be here today, she's out. We will get the statistics to you probably next week. I think she'll be back on Monday. She had surgery, so we're hoping for a speedy recovery, a speedy and safe, I should say, recovery for her. And I think we'll get that information to you. With that, I will stop. I don't know if either Angela or Robert have any thoughts that they would like to share.
None, I'm good right now, boss.
Angela? No? Okay. Any questions of me at the present time? 435 letters were sent out. By the way, we get that information and really love the fact that the license collector's office keeps that information, which is where we got that stuff from. And they've been very helpful over the course of the year to us. love the relationship that we have with them. So are there any additional questions that you all have? No? Okay. So Joe or Christine, is there a possibility that the Board of Aldermen may do anything related to the FY22 budget? You're on mute.
That's because I got a squeaky chair. I don't want. The committee today on Reed's proposals, is happening. Hopefully, maybe we'll get out and will be before us on Friday. Having chaired Ian, the Ways and Means for the last few years, I stayed out of it this year. I just needed a break. But I'm not on the. I've been reading along with it, but as far as we're trying to deal with those proposal changes. This is a very unusual year for budget. Last year was very, very unusual. So it's just kind of a different little way of life for everyone these days. So let's see what happens in the committee today.
Yeah, just to follow up, I think Board Bill 1 is the budget has to go into effect July 1st. So I don't anticipate anything happening with Board Bill 1. It'll just remain on the informal calendar. And to Alderman Vollmer's point, Board Bill 2 is the American Rescue Plan Act funds. President Reed has a committee substitute in the HUD's committee at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Thank you. Anyone else? Our next meeting is September 1st. Unless something miraculously happens before then. I think I'll be in touch with some of you about some of the other issues that we are facing. I know Lisa was very helpful, or will be even more helpful. One of the things we're going to do is get out letters to union shops, because unions sort of do things their way. And my dad was a labor organizer, et cetera. But I don't think some of the unions really know that there are city ordinances regarding civil rights of their employee, not their employees, but people that they are in their shops. So we're going to get out, probably by the end of next week, we'll get out that information to some of those unions that are in the city of St. Louis, that have people in the St. Louis city. Anything else? If not, I will let you all go early today, which is not that bad.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.